Good morning, class. Welcome to our class session for today. I would like to start with a quick note for you to complete your midterms if you have not already done that. The midterm is available on Blackboard. I have posted it on the top right hand corner, so please make a point to complete the midterm because it is coming due in the next few days. So today I want to do a quick overview of the three arms of government. Last week we talked about Congress. I want to briefly go over that towards the tail end of this session. But I'd like to start with the judiciary and then talk about the presidency and wrap it up with the legislature. So the judiciary is the arm of government that interprets the law. It's composed in the United States of the 9 Supreme Court justices. The powers of the judiciary are established in Article 3 of the United States Constitution. And the judiciary is the arm that, as I said, interprets the law. It doesn't make law, it interprets the law. In other words, it correlates laws that are made by Congress and shines them against the Constitution. And based on the Constitution, it tells us, or it interprets what the law is based on the Constitution. And in that context, it interprets the law. By interpreting the law, the judiciary sometimes goes through a process in the United States of what we call judicial review. This is a process that's unique in the context of lawmaking to the United States, in that judicial review is a process that the judiciary uses to provide checks and balances on the legislative and executive branches. In other words, through judicial review, the judiciary is able to invalidate congressional statutes that are deemed to be unconstitutional. And again, note that judicial review was established through the precedent of Marbury v. Madison of 1803. That's an important case, Marbury v. Madison, 1803. And what this case did was it established this idea that the courts can review statutes passed by Congress and decide whether they are constitutional or not. In other words, declare them invalid. And this is a power unique to the US judicial system. If you look at the English system, from which a lot of our law and case structure is copied from, this power is not as strong. In other words, their parliament has a final say in terms of lawmaking. But in our context, we have this caveat of judicial review based on Marbury v. Madison. Marbury v. Madison, the case I just highlighted, that established judicial review. So the basic characteristics of the judiciary: the judicial branch hears cases that challenge or require interpretation of the legislation passed by Congress and signed by the president. Recently, we saw a bunch of colleges sue the federal government for its position on requiring international students to take at least one face-to-face class, which a position which the Trump administration walked back from. But should that not have happened, then this was a case that the Supreme Court was going to have to decide upon. And we also saw a bunch of states sue the Trump administration, the executive, for its actions on the very same immigration process for international students. And again, because the Trump administration walked away from that, a lot of that is moot at this point. But this really shows the important place that the courts play. The Supreme Court is the most visible of all the federal courts. And the current Supreme Court, please review that. There's 9 justices in the court. Supreme Court interprets the law. The primary function of courts in general and the Supreme Court in particular is to interpret the law. Legal interpretations, judges base their decisions on precedent. Precedent are decisions that have been made, or legal decisions that have been made in the past from which future law is derived. And in terms of legal interpretation, it's used to explain interpretations by invoking generally accepted legal standards or yardsticks in terms of how the law is going to be interpreted, how decisions are made. In other words, a judge making a judicial decision, or judges making judicial decisions today, have to base it on precedent. There has to be some kind of rationale or consistency in terms of how they see and interpret the law. We have a federal court system, and we also have state court systems, and these two systems work in tandem. In other words, they work together, but they're different systems. One's for the federal system, and there's also state court systems which apply to state law. State court system, state courts are lower courts, municipal courts, police courts, justices of the peace. In other words, state court decisions apply only to the states. So, for example, state court decisions for New York only apply to the state of New York. State court decisions for California, or the state court system for Montana, those decisions of those state courts apply only to the state, the particular state that the court has jurisdiction over. However, federal court decisions apply to the whole United States, whether it's through the district courts, the circuit courts of appeal, or the Supreme Court. Federal courts have 3 layers. You have district courts, your circuit courts of appeal, and Supreme Court at the highest level. In terms of jurisdiction, we have what we call original jurisdiction, and these are cases that go directly to the Supreme Court. They're not cases that come through lower courts. We also have appellate jurisdiction, and appellate jurisdiction means the case has already been heard elsewhere, and is now being heard in the appellate court. And that middle band of courts that I talked about before, we have the Supreme Court, circuit courts of appeal, and the district courts. The circuit courts of appeal are appellate courts. They receive cases from the district courts in the federal court system. All right. And the president nominates members to the Supreme Court, and they have lifetime appointments. I will segue then into the presidency. I'm trying to keep this short, highlighting the main points. And in terms of the American presidency, this is the executive arm of government. And the presidency basically enforces the law. Article 1 establishes the powers of Congress. Article 2 tells us what the powers of the president are, or what the president can or cannot do. Who can become president? Again, the powers of the president. Who can become president are found in Article 2, Section 1. You must be 35 years old and a natural born citizen. Who can't be president? A non-natural born citizen cannot be president. So, for example, if you're born in another country and you got US citizenship, you automatically cannot be president. You have to be natural born, meaning born of born in the United States or one of the US. If you're born abroad, you have parents that are US citizens, and that will qualify you to be natural born. So think about the electoral college. In terms of the electoral college and the path to the presidency, a candidate becomes president by winning a majority of the 270 of the 538 electoral college votes that are up for grabs. And again, through the electoral college system, it's an indirect way through which the citizenry or the voters elect the president. So people vote, but based on the votes or votes in each state, candidates win states as they run for the presidency. So for example, in the last election between Trump and Hillary Clinton, the winner of the election was not based on the majority of the votes that each candidate got. In other words, Hillary won a majority of the votes in terms of she won more votes than Donald Trump. But in our system, the person that wins the election is the person that wins the majority of the electoral college. So it's a person that wins 270 out of the 538 electoral college votes. So people vote, for example, in New York, based on the number of electoral college votes of New York. If Hillary Clinton wins or Trump wins, you win that state, and you win all the electoral college votes for that state. If the election's happening for the whole United States, in Texas, for example, Hillary and Trump are running in Texas. Trump wins Texas, he wins all the electoral college votes for Texas. All the 50 states electoral college votes are added up, and the total number of electoral college votes for all 50 states is 538. And the person that wins the presidency is the person that wins 270 of those 538 electoral college votes. If you have any further questions on this, I'm trying to keep this lecture brief. Please email me and I'll be glad to do a follow-up lecture or email you additional supports in terms of the electoral college and the electoral college map. So take a look at the PowerPoint. It just gives you an idea of the different results for different elections in terms of the electoral college map for different election periods. Domestic powers of the president. The president enforces law, treaties, and court decisions. In other words, again, the president enforces the law. Powers of the president to convene Congress into special session. So, for example, when we had the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt convened Congress for a special session to request a declaration of war against the Japanese. And also powers of the president to nominate heads of executive departments, ambassadors, and federal court justices. So if the president nominates them and the Congress will confirm those appointments. Domestic powers continued, powers of the president to grant reprieves and pardons. We recently saw it with Roger Stone in terms of President Trump pardoning him. The president has a power to veto legislation. A veto prevents a congressional law passed from taking effect. A presidential veto can be overridden by a 2/3 majority in Congress. Foreign policy powers. The president is the commander-in-chief of the United States. The president has the powers to provide for executive agreements. These are pacts between the president and other heads of state that do not require